Okay, so Chazei Hashem, we get to continue our learning. I just wanted to make a small PSA, public service announcement, is that Be'ezras Hashem, Sunday night, we are launching a new series of shiurim. And these shiurim will be leading up to Hanukkah. We have a good, solid couple of weeks now, and I was just preparing for it earlier, a little bit earlier today, this evening. It's going to be something remarkable, like something extra, extra special. We're learning Likutei Halachas from Reb Nassan of Breslov, underlying many of the concepts, many of the halachas, many of the themes of Hanukkah, and hopefully giving us a brand new appreciation of what Hanukkah is. And so if you are able to make it, we're doing it in partnership with Beis Gabriel. So that itself is, I think, a pretty unique thing. And B'chazei Hashem, I think it's going to be something really tremendous. And it would be so special if you were able to make it. It's 8 to 9, 45-minute cheer, 15-minute discussion, questions, conversation. And the idea is, ready to begin preparing for Hanukkah weeks and weeks in advance, in the hope that when we finally get to Hanukkah, we're gonna have the vessels for it. Okay, so if you're able to join us, please do. Of course, it'll all be recorded for anybody who's watching online and will be posted. And Ashreinu. Okay, so excellent. You're right on time. Mom is right on time. Thank you so much for coming. Let's jump into it. We're going to finish the piece that we were learning last week. We just have one last shtickle to finish L'Chadaidi, and then we're going to move into Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, about which there is much to say, and a few different mamarim in the Sefer Yichud HaShabbos, which we'll explore. Okay, so first let's finish off. We were talking about Ba'yichala. We were talking about the idea of trying to connect to Shabbos in a way of simplicity, right? Tmimus upshitos, where a person's not going into it, not for the physical tanugim, not even for spiritual illumination, but just to be there. I think we spoke last week at length about the way in which, no matter what a person's week looked like, you come into Shabbos, we said from the tzadikim, ki'ilu kol malachtecha asuya, it's as if all of your work is done, not just practically, physically, but even spiritually. And we explained that there's an aspect that's being activated within the individual Jew that has nothing to do with that individual as an individual. It's a spark of Knesset Yisrael, right? It's a revelation, it's a gilui of the whole entire nation. It's the collective spirit of Am Yisrael, where the whole entity emerges, where you're just a cell, and the impediments, the difficulties, the obstacles, the challenges, the walls, the barriers that exist mitzidecha, right, or for mitzidi, from our own individual perspective. When the light of the collective is revealed, it just, like we said, when you're sitting at the table of the king, you don't have to worry about what are you going to eat that afternoon. You're spending the day in the palace. There's plenty of food. There's enough. There's a revelation of enoughness, as it were. Shiras, I'm so sorry. It's okay. So we're continuing from there. We're taking a look at page Reish, and we're up to the section that's Eishes Chayel Ateres Bala. So says the Heilige Rebbe, says Reb Kluger, who's explaining the teachings of Rabbi Nachman here, where he says, Zeu pnimiyas avoda. This is the inner understanding of how Rabbi Nachman conceived of a true avodas Hashem. Has to be through tmimus upshitas, shegilu Rabbeinu HaKadosh, that Rabbi Nachman's chus Yagonaleinu revealed, she'ikar kiyumahu b'derech shalamuna. That the essence of faith, I spoke about this earlier this week in my Sichos on Shir on Tuesday afternoon, the main thing is through simple faith. Simple emunah. Kedugmas ha'eshes chayil, just like the paradigm of the Eishes Chayil, Sha'ad boyal beis bala hachasin, that before, he's saying it about the woman, I think in the modern age we should say it about both, not just the woman, but it's true about the man as well, is that as singles we have our own das, we have our own ideas and our own ambitions, and our time is our own. We don't have to care for somebody else. So this single girl, yesh les haseichel v'havana shala b'chol davar, right? It's her life, and she's on her own as an individual. Thank you, and thank you guys so much for coming. But after she gets married, and again, hopefully this is true for both of them, relatively speaking, so then each individual understands that there's so much more than just individual people. And she binds herself with total faith and simplicity, and they're mevatel, their own das, in relation to this third thing that's called the relationship, right? Which is something else. A marriage isn't just two people that happen to be sharing their lives together. It becomes something else. Right? V'hayu, as the pasuk says, V'hayu lebasar echad. They become a third entity, which is really the original entity of Adam and Chava before they were split. V'chule, v'chule, v'chule. That's the idea. And so the Iker experience is not when this one comes with his sophistication, this one comes with her sophistication, and then together they sort of try to fit this thing together. No, there's a certain bittul, there's a certain sublimation of their own individual desires into a third element that can only be there, and this is hopefully in a healthy marriage, this is the way it's supposed to be, where they recognize that they're only half, they're only a part, and there's a tamimus there, and from those two halves is built a third element that's much stronger and much deeper than any of their individualistic experiences could have been otherwise. Right, and so that's the idea. And without their individual desires for their own purposes, it's something deeper. Right? There's a relationship that they're both going to work on. They're both going to fight for. They're going to preserve this very delicate entity that's called the relationship. You have to be very careful with the relationship, right? It's not just be careful with the other person. There's something here between you. Ish v'isha zacha shchina shri b'neihem. There's shchina here. There's a revelation of something else that needs to be cared for, that needs to be nurtured. And that takes emunah, that takes tamima, simplicity. Uchadivra Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and like Rabbi Nachman says, and it's brought down in Siach Sarfei Kodesh, which is a collection much later on in history of the Breslover Chasidus, where Rav Levi Yitzchak Bender, who was basically the manhig of Breslover Chasidus after the Second World War, who survived among very, very few Breslover Hasidim, almost 90%, they say, of Breslover Hasidus was completely decimated in the war, particularly Polish Breslover Hasidus, and whole stories about how he managed to survive. Incredible. He survived World War I and World War II, and after the war he lived a phenomenally old age. I think he was like 90, late in his 90s, which then was a huge chiddush. Today it's less so, but then was a gigantic chiddush. And he basically was like the repository of all of the sort of Torah Shabbal Pet, like the oral traditions of Breslover Chasidus, the stories and the anecdotes and things that were never written down but were passed from Rebbe to Talmud, Rabbi Nachman to Reb Nosson, Reb Nosson to Reb, to Reb Nachman Tolchiner, Reb Nachman Tolchiner, to Reb Avram ben Reb Nachman, who was his son, and so on, all the way down through the ages. And Rav Levi Yitzchak had a phenomenal memory. He was an absolute genius, but also a huge tamim, very simple, finished Kol HaTorah Kula every year, didn't miss one night of Tikkun Chatzos for 70 years straight. Like, we're talking about a gigantic soul, tremendous tzaddik. And toward the end of his life, he started to make sure that all of these teachings were preserved and were written down. So primarily they were all recorded, even though there are some other Sfarim as well. There are a few of these much later on in history, Breslover Sfarim. But Siach Sarfei Kodesh has a couple of volumes, and it's basically all from the teachings that were preserved by Rav Levi Yitzchak Bender, and this is one of them. That Rabbi Nachman is purported and recorded as having said, Yesh li shalish kitas chasidim, says the Rebbe. Says, I have three kinds of chasidim. Kita Rishayna, the first group of chasidim, Shabbat Mlacht of Shrayim. They come for some extra gefilte fish. They come to just grab some Shrayim, and that's they're chasidim because they come to Tish and they grab Shrayim. Sure, it's a holy thing and it's better than them being elsewhere, but that's one group. Kita Shnia, obviously a little bit of a higher experience, is Shabayim L'Shmaya Torah. They come to learn. Rabbi Nachman is revealing Torah. They enjoy it, they appreciate it, and they come to hear Torah. But says the Rebbe, Kita Shlishis, I want you to know, I have a third group of Chasidim, Sha'afuyim Belibi, that are baked into my heart. Sha'afuyim Belibi. Says Rabbi Nachman, Ritzayni Shetiyo Mikata Shlishis. He says, I would like for you all to be of the third group.
It's an interesting choice of word, like baked.
Baked, mamish. Baked in.
No, it's just like
baked in. I think maybe it has to do with warmth, with heat, with the idea of something fluffy, something that is sort of like when you bake two things together. Maybe this is also connected to what we said before. It becomes a third entity. It's like they're baked together. They're baked.
It's funny, he doesn't say anything about them. He's just saying the result of the relationship. They're already baked in my heart, but he doesn't say they're the ones that do X, Y, Z.
Right. No, I think that this is the greatest. Well, Adarabba, this is the point, is that they're not really doing per se. It's not about that, but it's about the relationship is something so deep where we're connected for all eternity. And it goes beyond what they get and beyond maybe even what they give. It's just the facts. Let's see how he says it. Tahainu, meaning Shamnam gam misha kasher litzadik amanas lahavik to ls. Gashmis, he says even a person who's connected to a tzaddik because they want, physical benefits, whether that comes, let's say, from the standpoint of actual shirayim or the bracha, ostensibly, that a person gets if they're eating shirayim, which obviously, it's eating from the shulchan of a tzaddik, is like eating from the mizbeach and so on. That's where that idea comes from of shirayim, or the idea of the fact that, it's a symbol sort of for people who come to the tzaddik and they get a bracha for their business or they get some advice and so on. So even a person who comes just for that reason, ruchnis, or hopefully in a higher level, a person who comes for a spiritual to'eles, they're learning Torah, they're getting guidance and advice for how to serve Hashem better, zed davar tov. He says that's a good thing. Avol tachlis ha'eskashrus, but to really be connected to a tzaddik who afuya belibi, is this idea of being baked into the heart, which is which is the aspect of, like we mentioned, this eishes chayil, where it's like a marriage of sorts. Because of the incredible nearness and love and closeness, even if a person comes and the tzaddik doesn't teach Torah, even if the person doesn't get any bracha, there's a kesher, there's a relationship, there's a mentor and mentee, I think is the proper word, relationship between them. There's the relationship between a spiritual master and the student, who just by being in the presence of the tzaddik feels this kesher, feels this relationship. And I think I'm remembering in the name of one of the Chabad Rabbeim, I'm not sure if it was the Rebbe Rashab, the Tzemach Tzedek, one of the early Chabad Rebbes, is quoted, I think, if I'm not going to mess this up, is quoted as having said that when David was describing the love that he shared with Yonasan, where he said, Nefleisa avas chali me avas nashim, that our love is even deeper, so to speak, than the love between avas nashim, a person and his beloved, his wife. He says, if David HaMelech would have been after the time of the Baal Shem Tov, he wouldn't have used that. He would have said, my love for you is greater than the love for a student to his Rebbe, a chassid to his Rebbe. Because that's even a higher darga. That's even, in a certain sense, a higher darga. And it's something difficult to understand, all the while that a person hasn't found a tzaddik. We're going to be learning a lot about this on Sunday night. The whole thing of Chanukah, according to Reb Nosson, not to give the whole thing away, is about the or of the tzaddik. About the light, that's the idea, the light of the tzaddikim, the ar haganos, right, that was hidden for the tzaddikim, that is the 36 hours, right, famous, right, that the ar haganos was shining up until it was hidden ultimately, and the 36 hidden tzaddikim, right, that are in every generation. Those tzaddikim are reflecting the ar haganos, which is reflected also in the 36 Chanukah candles, if you count them all up without the shamas, right, of each night. So eventually you have 1 plus 2 plus, right, and keep on adding them up all the way through the whole Chanukah. We have 36 candles. This is the ar haganos, the ar of the tzaddikim, where there's an ar that goes beyond anything that can be communicated, where it's just what these people represent, what they stand for. And there's a love there, because there's a realization that if I am not a guf where it's pleasurable and it's useful and there are millions of to'eles, oriented perspectives on marriage, etc., for the fact that we're alive and we're in this world. But a person knows that ultimately I'm a neshama, and I as a neshama need guidance. Thank you so much for coming here, Alex. I need guidance. I need to know why I'm here. I need to make sure that I'm doing what I was sent to this world to do. And here, when I come into the presence of this particular tzaddik, I'm connected. Even if I didn't learn anything from him, even if I didn't get any bracha gashmias from him, which is again symbolized in Shrayim, but there's a kiruv and a love. There's a dvekus that's forged out of simplicity, of experience. So shalafi goydel akiruv yahava kvar enam avakesh shum hasaga. So at that point, he doesn't want anything else. Milvad etzem haeskashris v'advekus. Just the privilege of knowing that we have a connection to this particular tzaddik. And again, many people have tzaddikim who are living. Some have tzaddikim who are not living, who are mamish alive in their sfarim, like Rabbi Nachman said, he said, I put my whole self in my sefer. Because you want to know me in the Sfarim. And a person can build a relationship with tzaddikim. Find a sefer you connect to. You know, and you have to find the right one. Sometimes you have to spend many years. That's also we're going to learn about chipos, to search for the tzaddikim. I'm giving the whole thing away already Sunday night, but you should come to see it inside. But the whole thing has to do with searching, because like the Gemara Pesachim tells us, how do you search? Chipos is done with a ner, right? Ner Hashem nishmas Adam chofes kol chadrei baten, right? To search is done with a ner. Says Rav Nosson, that's what we're doing with the Chanukah candles. We're searching for the light of the tzaddik. The whole Chanukah is about a search. It's in the dark, and we're trying to find, like, I need some inspiration. I need a channel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put tzaddikim into the world that are reflecting and channeling the Araganas. And sometimes it can take time. Some people will connect to Breslov, some people will connect to Chabad, some people will connect to Babov, some people will connect to Sfas Emes. So, sometimes, but it means I believe that there is a tzaddik. Vayaminu b'Hashem, I believe that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, Moshe Avdai, and I believe that there are tzaddikim. And that's the way the whole Yiddishkeit is set up. Some people don't know this, but it's brought down in halacha, that the reason that primarily, fundamentally, even though we try to have two people standing on either side of the bima, but fundamentally there's supposed to be three, right? There's the person who is reading the Torah, the Baal Koreh, there's the person that was called up for an aliyah, and then there's a third person who's supposed to stand by the side. And the reason is because these three are representative of the three entities that were present at the giving of the Torah originally, and all subsequent experiences of revelation from Shemayim, which is a shocking thing, because what are you talking about? Three. Memela, I understand that there's two, because there's Am Yisrael, the receiver, and there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's the Nosein HaTorah. What's the third? The third individual standing at the bima, by Kriyas HaTorah, which is again a mini Kabbalah HaTorah, we make the bracha, v'nasan lanu Torahs emes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us the Torah in that moment, is Keneged Moshe Rabbeinu. There are three partners in the experience of being Mekabel Torah. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up the world. Now Moshe in and of himself is nothing. Ve'ish Moshe anam ma'ayim mikol adam. But what he is precisely because of his quote unquote nothingness, is an empty channel. That without that channel, the whole system falls apart. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is nastalik lamala, and Am Yisrael are yared lamata, and there's no connectivity between them. So this is the light of the tzaddik. And again, sometimes can take a long time searching, but to be a mavakesh, and to know that there is a tzaddik who I'm connected to him. There is a tzaddik that each of us are connected to. There is a derech. And we have to spend our lives trying and tasting and searching and testing and until you find it. And when you find it, it clicks. You say, this is what I was looking for all my life. Mamish all my life. So coming back, that's just a mashal, but coming back to Shabbos, L'darga zu zoicha hayehudi b'sgulas haShabbos. This is what a Jew could merit on Shabbos Kodesh. Shebiyoyim zeh nichlo ba'avodas Hashem yisbarach b'derech shel amuna belvad, where a person comes into Shabbos and connects just through this simplicity, this amuna. We didn't come to Shabbos for Shrayim. We didn't come to Shabbos for Torah that Shabbos reveals. We came to Shabbos to be baked into the heart of Shabbos. That Shabbos should be baked into our heart. That it's beyond anything that words could say. It's beyond concepts. It's the thing itself. Like the philosopher said, a person can describe in words what fireworks are, and you can tell them how they work. Then you can say what it looks like, but none of that captures the experience of watching fireworks. It's just a whole different thing. Nobody, like they also say, the distinction between the map and the actual territory. There's a difference between knowing what France looks like because you know a map and maybe you memorized all the different areas and the topographies. But then, there's a difference between that and actually being in France. It's something else. So a person can come to Shabbos with all the ideas and all of the the different aspects and facets, but just the experience of Shabbos itself is what we're after. And that's the Bechina of Eishes Chayil that we sing Friday night. The simplicity of bittul, where people come into a marriage and they're mavatal themselves to something greater, to something deeper. There's a third element that's revealed that's greater than the sum of the parts. It's a third thing. So that's what he says. L'darga zu zoicha Yehudi b'skulas haShabbos. This is what we're trying to connect to when it comes Shabbos. On this day we're connecting just through faith. And we're not searching for anything else. That just being in the palace of the king is ketachlis mitzad atzmai. What more do I need? I'm here. What more am I after? I'm present. I'm in Shabbos. So just experience it. Immerse yourself in it. Yes, again, there will be other aspects of Shabbos, delicious food. And there's the tefillas, and there's the kiddush, and there's the chavraya, and hopefully there's learning, and there's shiurim, and so on and so forth. All of this is wonderful. But Shabbos, and we're going to learn in the next piece what we say, Nusach Sfard at least says from the Zohar Kodesh, Raza de Shabbos, the secret of Shabbos, Ihi Shabbos, is just Shabbos. Shabbos itself is the secret of Shabbos, meaning to say that there is no way that we could describe what Shabbos is other than by just telling you, just experience it. Shabbos itself is the secret of Shabbos. We cannot describe it in any other way. But I want to experience Shabbos. Can you tell me what it is? Shabbos. Shabbos. Shabbos is what Shabbos is. But that didn't explain anything. That's right, because it's beyond explanation. You have to experience it. You have to experience it. You imagine a person, maybe, I don't know what everybody's background is, but could be a person, especially people are listening to the recording, maybe you've had this experience yourself, but people who come from a background where they never experienced Shabbos at all. And imagine a person goes for the first time, they're invited, one of the many organizations here through AISH, through JLE, SEED, one of the different organizations, and they find the person a place to go for Shabbos. Assuming that the person has the experience that we hope a person to have on Shabbos, it would be a terrible sign if after the whole 25 hours of Shabbos, with all of the different factors and aspects and moments and experiences and tastes and smells and sights and sounds and the whole thing, afterwards you ask him how it was, and what'd you do? And he just describes the weekend, like, oh, on Friday night I had like a meal, and he describes the food, and then on Saturday morning I had another meal and whatever. That's not what Shabbos is. Shabbos isn't the abstraction of different experiences. Hopefully, should come out with the spirit of Shabbos, and that's what changes lives. When all of a sudden you're able to taste something that you can't put your finger on it. I can't put my finger on it. Sure, again, we go into Shabbos hoping that we'll access all of the different delights, both physical and metaphysical, spiritual, all the different aspects of what Shabbos is. But always remember the spirit of Shabbos. That even in a moment on Shabbos when, let's say, you're not actively engaged with anything other than you might have been during the week. Let's say a person just sitting, you go to the park, you sit on the bench. It may as well be Tuesday, so you're not doing something that's Shabbostic per se. But a person should be able to experience a different universe. Right? Like that story, I think Reb Shlomo says, that, of Aaron HaGadol of Karlin, I think was the tzaddik, where somebody came to visit him for Shabbos, and he sees it's Erev Shabbos, and Rav Aaron Karlin is like smoking a pipe, until Mamash Shkia, with all of his mystical intentions. The whole room is full of smoke. And he's standing, you don't know the story, and he's standing at the window, and he's looking out over the expanse of the hills and the sky. Yes, Rav Aaron HaGadol, you remember the story? And he tells him, he says, so what do you, he says, and Rav Aaron calls over this yid, he says, look out. He says, what do you see? He says, I see the sun is setting, I see, clouds, I see the hills. He says, can't you see? Can't you see the clouds of the 6 days of the week making way for the clouds of Shabbos? Can't you see the grass of the 6 days of the week making place for the grass of Shabbos? Meaning, can't you see that when the sun sets on Shabbos, it isn't the transition from Friday to Saturday. It's a whole new universe. There's a universe of Shabbos. That this is what we're supposed to be feeling and preparing ourselves to feel. Raza de Shabbos, Ihi Shabbos. It's just Shabbos. That's what the secret of Shabbos is. So ki royas etzem shehusa beheichal hamelech, just being in the palace of the king, kitachlis mitzad atzmai. He doesn't want anything else, doesn't need anything else. He's there. The eina oisek ba'atzmai klal. And the person is not focused on him or herself alone at all. Ad asher margish, like we learned last week, until he feels ka'isem melechu malka, like that king and that queen, she'enim makpidim al gedi al teleh, where he's not worried about the different particularities of this. Am I going to have enough to eat? Am I not going to have enough to eat? You'll have enough to eat, don't worry. But it's not about that. It shouldn't be about that. Shabbos should be a ruach of yishav adas. If you ever go to a kiddush and people are shoving each other out of the way to make sure that they get some herring, it's the furthest thing from Shabbos. It's the furthest thing from Shabbos. That's the first sign that a person is not in the spirit of Shabbos. Because the spirit of Shabbos, you remember with the word we used last week, I think somebody offered the word abundance, right? And there's the word we found. The spirit of Shabbos is a spirit of abundance. Doesn't mean that there's going to be enough herring for everybody. Maybe there won't be enough herring for everybody. But lo achbat lecha, meaning the whole Shabbos needs to be a ruach of calm. That's what the Zohar Kodesh famously says. Shabbos is the Zohar. It's not talking about fire. Even though, of course, it's talking about fire. It's talking about, who remembers? Anger. Anger. Let there not be any anger in your heart on Shabbos. And anger is just sort of a collective emotion. And it's the center of the wheel with our spokes. And all those spokes are anxiety, frustration, disappointment, like all this stuff. Shabbos ki'ilu kol melachtecha asuya. Everything's done on Shabbos. Chill. That's what emunah means. Emunah is chill. Or we always say savlanas. That's what Shabbos is. Total calm as much as possible. And just being in a mindset of like, I don't need anything. I don't need anything. I don't need kugel. I don't need chalent. I don't need herring. Now, it's Einik Shabbos. We're supposed to enjoy it. I'll have, hopefully, herring and kugel and chalent. But Shabbos is like, meaning we're getting our sustenance from somewhere else. And that's what I'm trying to find words, to put the word, the beyond words into words. But hopefully, I think we get the picture, right? We're trying to be nizayin, to be sustained from Shabbos itself. Shabbos itself. Ukesayid hanemer b'Shabbos, again, klum chaser bebeis hamelech. You're in the palace of the king, so there's nothing missing. Ukeboy al shulchan Shabbos. So then when you come Friday night, after hopefully immersing yourself and ourselves in these ideas through Kabbalah Shabbos and through the preparations and everything, you come and you sing Masher Eishes Chayil Miyimsa. You sing about this idea of a marriage, of Eishes Chayil Ateres Bala, which is defined by a relationship that's more than just what he brings to the table alone and what she brings to the table alone. You sing about the relationship that's much more than any of them individually, because nobody would describe a couple that's been married for 50 years as individuals who happen to live together, hopefully, right? It's they've built a home together. And the home that they've built it is an expression of the mixing of energies from her side to his side to her side. It's something else. There's a third element. They're now a family. Zamashu acher. And so because Shabbos is supposed to be that experience, where we're supposed to experience on Shabbos something far greater than the sum of the parts, so to speak, so what more appropriate to sing Friday night than Eishes Chayil? What more appropriate than to sing of a relationship which again, behechrich, is ish v'isha, but shchina shri b'neim. It's something so much more than just the parts. And that's how we're supposed to be connecting Friday night to Shabbos. That's a deeper reason, says Rav Kluger, why we sing Eishes Chayil on Friday night at the Su'udah.
Is that what Eishes Chayil is representing? That the relationship, that same.
The relationship, yeah. Yeah, and the bittul, the bittul that each one brings to the relationship, where they're being mevatel themselves in deference to something else, like this third thing between them. Yeah. Yeah?
I said beautiful.
It's mamish beautiful. It's mamish beautiful, that's right.
I don't know if my wife will like it though. Like, see, no, it's not about you. It's not me and the God, okay? Just stay out of it, okay?
It's true on all the levels. There's pshat, there's remez, there's drush, aside, razah, razah.
My mum years ago, and it was the biggest mistake.
Right, it's the one time a week they feel that they're finally getting. It's all true. It's all true. Right? This is the idea. It's about the relationship. Hashem yizakenu le'emunah zu. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us with this faith. Don't get too excited. He's finishing. I'm not finishing yet. Okay, this is the end of this mime. We're going to turn the page. But he says he's ending with a bracha. And everybody's getting ready for the kugel. So, he says, may Hashem enable us to merit this emunah right? Bitui leklalos avodas Hashem yisbarach b'yimos hachol, which should really just be a taste of what avodas Hashem during the week is supposed to look like as well. And it should express this same inyan. It's about the relationship. It's not about tefillin or tzitzis or daf or yomi or zohar or anything else. It's about something deeper, about the relationship. Shebalis galusa b'leil Shabbos Kodesh, that comes to reveal itself in our experience Friday night. In the home of the collective soul of the Jewish nation, and that's with that we close our section on L'Chadaydi B'Chazdei Hashem. Okay, turn over the page. Turn actually 2 pages, and now we're going to begin to learn a little bit about Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos. We're not going to finish probably the rest of the packet. I guess we'll continue next week, but let's at least make a schala. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos. This Mizmar, that is a song in the honor of and reflecting, as we're going to learn, the energy of the day of Shabbos. Zukt Reb Kluger, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos. Isa b'Gemara. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph says the following: Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Amar Omer Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda says a tradition in the name of Rabbi Akiva. What did the Levium sing? We know that the Levium sang a different song every day, Shir Shel Yom. What did they sing? Says Rabbi Akiva, what did they sing on the first day? La Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya. The whole earth and everything within it belongs to God. Why on the first day? Al Shem shekana v'hikne v'shalit b'olamai. Because on the first day of creation, this was the first dawn of anything being created, of existence. Al Shem Shekana, Kodesh Baruch Hu acquired, v'hikne, and gave, v'shalit, and controlled over His world, and that relates to the first day of creation. B'sheni ma'ayu hayomim. What do we sing on the second day? Gadol Hashem muhula ma'ayid. Why? Al Shem Shechilek Ma'asav, because it was on the second day that Kodesh Baruch Hu divided between the waters. U'malach aleim, and Kodesh Baruch Hu became the melech over them. And melech is impossible when everything is one. Melech is only possible when there are two, right? And now there's a melech and an am. There's a king and a nation. And this is reflected in the split of the water, which is all homogeneous. It's unity, it's a metaphor. And it's split into two. Now there's a mayim elyonim, mayim tachtonim. Now there's the aspect of melech. And so memela, on the second day we sing, Gadol Hashem umuhulal ma'oid. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is praised very greatly from the standpoint of His now being the Melech. On the third day they sing, Elikim nitza ba'adas kel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stands up ba'adas kel in the congregation, the divine congregation. Al Shem shegila aretz b'chachmasai. On the third day HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed the earth, ve'hechen teva la'adasai, and was created all the plants and vegetation. And that's ba'adas kel, right? That's like the great collectivity of created things, created revelations of godliness. On the fourth day it says, Kel nekamas Hashem. God is a vengeful spirit. Al Shem Shabara Chama Ulavana Va'asali Parme Avdeim. Because on that day when the sun and the moon were created, which the basic divergence from monotheism is the polytheistic worship, right, of different celestial beings. Primary among them was the sun and the moon, which they worshipped. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Kel Nekamas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take retribution for those, right, who are willfully serving idols and ignoring the unity of existence, which is the whole purpose of the world. On the fifth day, Thursday, Harninu Lelikim Ozenu. We sing to the God who is our strength. Al Shem Shabara Oifos V'Dagim. Because on that day He created the fish and the birds, L'Shabeach L'Shmai, who are constantly praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, particularly the birds. And on the sixth day, Hashem Malach Geus Lavesh Al Shem Shegamar Malachtai Malach Alehem. Right, and the sixth day is mamish the revelation of God's Malchus, because at that point the whole creation was finished. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Melech over everything, Hashem Malach. And on the seventh day, we say Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, Yom SheKulo Shabbos. Mizmor Shir, we sing a song for the day of Shabbos, says the Gemara. That's a reference to what's referred to here as the Yom SheKulo Shabbos. The day that is only Shabbos, that the whole day is Shabbos. What's going on over here? Says Rav Kluger, here's an interesting thing to consider. In all the other 6 songs, the 6 prakim of Tehillim that were sung in the Beis HaMikdash by the Leviim for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even though, like we just learned, there is some kind of hint in the nature of at least how the paragraphs begin to what was created in the original 6 days of creation. Nowhere is there a mention in any of the kapitlach that this is a song for day 1, this is a song for the 2nd day of creation, this is a song for day 3. Stam dar remazim, maybe some kind of vague sort of hint or reference, veiled reference made in the opening sentence of these different kapitlach as referring to the 6 days of creation. The dukma, b'mizmor lashema aretz umlaya, right? Like we learned. Like it's true, it's maybe hinting to the creation that was begun on the first day. Nowhere in that Mizmor does it say Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos. Doesn't say that. Rak b'Shabbos. But on Shabbos, mefurish. Unlike the rest of the 6 days of the week, which is intuitive, of course, because Shabbos is like a completely different thing, so you'd expect there to be something different. But why this, right? Like what's the expression here? That Dafka Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos makes direct reference to Shabbos Kodesh, V'advarim tzarich Talmud, and we need to understand what this means. So he begins, V'tchilan avar ma'u oisa Yom SheKulo Shabbos. What is this day that is completely Shabbos that's referred to in the Gemara that we just saw in Rosh Hashanah Daf Lamed Aleph? So Rashi over there, Pirish Rashi explains, Sha'aseh ha'olam liyas charev. The world is destined to be completely destroyed. Ve'ein Adam, and there will be no humans. V'chol ha'malachos shoivsos, and every kind of creative act, which is all primarily done on the part of humans, because nature will just sort of function in its cycles, right? But the human being is productive; he's able to create. Everything will be shoivos. There will be no humans. Al Oisa Yom. So on that day. So Al Oisa Yom Yom SheKulo Shabbos. About that day, we say Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos Shabbos. We're thanking Hashem and we're singing a song about the day when humanity is decimated. Again, that's what it says on a Pashup Shah. The world is absolutely destroyed, and it's great. It's Shabbos. It's, everything's resting because everything's dead. And that's what it sounds like from Rashi. What a strange thing. Umuvan, and it's understood, right? This is a reference to after Mashiach comes. And says Rav Kluger, obviously, obviously we can't be talking about the actual physical destruction of the world. The whole world is going to get into nuclear Armageddon, and everything's going to be wiped out, and that will be Shabbos. What kind of Shabbos is that? That's the end? Chas v'shalom. Shaloya az klum, right? That there will be nothing. I'm sorry. That it is actually. No. I'm sorry. Yeah. Right? So, Chas v'shalom, we cannot mean that the world will be destroyed. Shaloya az klum, that there will be nothing. And everything will return and revert to its state of tayu v'vayu, or even beyond that, before anything was created. Can't be. Chas v'shalom lo'im arcade. It's impossible to interpret it this way. It's a big mistake. Ki adarabba, because we know that that's not how things end. Az ye'ikar gemulat tzadikim. There will be tremendous reward for the righteous. Va'amich kulam tzadikim, all of us, and the chasidi umas ha'olam, which will hopefully be all the umas ha'olam if we do our part right, and all of humanity will finally make it. V'chule v'chule v'chule. Ayin le'rasa likim zelasecha. We have no way of even explaining or understanding what this will look like. So that doesn't jive with the world being absolutely decimated, destroyed. See, he says you have to look in the Mefarshim, because we find support for this idea Dvarim Yisoidim b'Sefer Tzar Hamar, from the Heilige Tzar Hamar l'Chacham Kadmon Rabbi Avram Saba Zchus Yargon Aleinu v'Zel Shoinai. And he explains this in the following way: Ukamai Shah Shabbos hu Yom Menucha. Just like Shabbos is a day of rest, Remez Lo'olam Haba shu Menucha. It is a hint to Olam Haba, which is called the Yom Menucha. As everybody knows, Shabbos is called Me'ein Olam Haba, right? Like we sing in the Zmiris of Shabbos. Shabbos is 1/60th of the world to come. And And it is also a hint to the days of Mashiach that we are steadily approaching, Shehe Menucha Gemura B'li Etzev V'Daiga K'may Shabbos, which will be without any despair, depression, worry, K'may Shabbos. Ka'imram, and this is hinted again in the Gemara that we learned, Shis Alfi Shnin Havi Alma, for 6,000 years there will be a world, V'chad Charav. And for 1,000 years the world will be destroyed. He says, Shazeh Remez L'Imois HaMashiach. What this means is just a little bit of a turn of phrase. This is a reference to the days of Mashiach, Shia Olam Charev Mehadvar Merishonim. It just means that the world will be so fundamentally altered and so different from its prior state of existence, we can rightly say about the old world order, as it were, that is destroyed. And that's not there anymore. And it has been replaced with something far, 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 far better. There will be no framework of churban v'galus ala kol menucha ve'esek haTorah. We're just going to be able to do what our neshamas actually want to do, which is really to sit and learn in the holiest, most elevated kind of way. That's ultimately where everything is heading. And when you think back to the Gemara that says that Adam and Chava and the Eitz Hadas Koydem Achet, all the angels were Tzaidulim Lem Basar, right? They were making barbecues for them. They were roasting all the meat. They had everything they needed. They didn't have to do anything, which, in a certain sense, is interesting because, so they still needed to eat and drink, right? It doesn't say that they didn't need to eat and drink. They ate and drank, but in Gan Eden, the angels took care of everything. And then when you look at emerging technology, even though I know that there are varied opinions on this, right? And some would say Lehepech, this is Eitz Hadas Toivera, and et cetera, and we shouldn't partake of it, and who knows what it is, and it's a klipa and everything like this. I'm not a Navi, and I don't think anybody's a Navi, so no one can say absolutely with 1,000,000,000% certainty. But if you follow the trends, and if you stay on top of the technological innovations and the predictions for what the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years are going to look like, we didn't think that it would look this way, right? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing about such a fundamental shift to the way that human life is lived that we could imagine a world in which we have everything we need. We could begin to imagine a world where you need to do absolutely nothing. Where there are no wars because there's no need to fight anymore because we just have endless energy, endless resources, everyone's living comfortably, everyone's happy, and everyone's free to pursue what human beings are fundamentally supposed to pursue when you get all the noise of all the fragmentation and the challenges of an imperfect world out of the way. What is that? Everyone will have to figure that out. We know what that is, right? We'll sit and we'll contemplate and we'll be masig in Torah and we'll serve Hashem, believe Shalem, with total calm. And we'll find a way to express our creativity, and we'll have the time to be able to be misbainin and to work on ourselves and develop ourselves and so on. But we can imagine a world in which kol malachtecha asuya, right? All of your work is being done for you. How long will it take to get there? I don't know. Will the current technological revolution bring us there? I don't know, but it's not impossible. It's not I don't know if the Chaver is holding an AI, how fundamentally transformative these technologies are. And the promise that they hold for a whole new universe, a new world entirely. Like a rethink of what it means to be human, and how human lives are lived. Mamish, mamish, mamish. So, we're approaching this state, which is the world of Mashiach. Which he says over here is, Ela kol menucha ve'esek haTorah. Va'az yiskayim hashketu betach ad olam. And then there will be silence. And then there will be calm. And there will be security and stability. Shu olam haba, olam mishal Mashiach. Now does that mean again that it precludes a spiritual revolution and it precludes a spiritual revelation? Again, you'll remember that the Rambam doesn't even think that there's anything spiritual about the coming of Mashiach. The Rambam is mamish in this from this standpoint and in this sugya, fundamentally rationalist. Paskening the Gemara that says Ein Bain. The regular days of Galus to Yemaisa Mashiach, Shibra Malchias Bavad. There's really no fundamental difference. The Rambam learns it in a very, very technical way. And so none of us know, we have to sort of juggle all the different traditions and align them with the trends and where we see things flowing. But we're in interesting times. we're in really interesting times. And the next 20, 30 years is going to be unlike any other 20, 30-year period. Reason to say from the beginning of history until this point in history. In terms of the, what's the word? Not incremental growth, in terms of the exponential. Thank you, the exponential growth. It's a different world. It's a different world. And that's happening, you know. Olam Shel Mashiach. We're getting ready for a world of Mashiach, Shehu Menucha, which is a world of peace and peace of mind. Kamaya Shabbos, Shehu Shvi Umenucha. So just take we'll continue from here next week, but just take a look down in the footnote, Chaf Beis. And he brings this from two other tzaddikim, from the Ben Ish Chai, or really from one tzaddik, but in two Sfarim, from the Ben Ish Chai. Okay, Ein Zakasav Ben Ish Chai B'Sifra B'Nayo, brought in his Sefer B'Nayo, and he comments on this lashon v'chad charav. Says the Ben Ish Chai, she'ena kavana l'churban an guf kipshutai. He makes it clear that this doesn't mean that the world will be destroyed. And he says, Pirish Yecharev, what does it mean? That the world will be destroyed. Pirish Yecharev Chaymer Hativi Hamatsui Ata. So he learns that it is a spiritual revelation. That our experience of a physical world will be will collapse. Right? There will be a refining of all physicality. And it will be absolutely, this is sort of the approach of the Ramban, right, where the world will remain as it is, but it will be so refined that it's like translucent, it's like see-through, which the tzaddikim say this is what Adam and Chava originally had. They didn't have kasnas ar, they didn't have skin, right, garments of skin, right, they had kasnas ar, garments of light, right, which means that their, according to some Mefarshim, their skin was completely see-through, which means that they were transparent. There was no cloudiness, an aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah, ba'aspaklaria ha'me'ira, right? Where he's able to see through an unclouded window. Things used to be clear. The outside didn't used to cover up the inside. You could see Taichik Kabara, you saw it straight through, as clear as day. But then after the Chet, so the kasnas are with an aleph, right? Those garments of translucent light turn into garments of flesh, right? With an ayin.
Now, that's why Hashem said, like your alim and the Nachash's alim.
Right.
As opposed to them, they're not alim because their skin is see-through in and of itself, obviously in a metaphor.
In a metaphorical way. Beautiful. Beautiful. So says the Ben Ish Chai, that's what's going to happen to all of physicality. You're going to be able to see the ruchnius in it. Now again, I don't know if this is an ontological shift, like an actual objective shift, or a subjective shift, where all of humanity is just seeing it. Like it's like, wait, a tree is mamish a gilui elokus, and you see it. And that's what you see when you look at a tree. You know, so I don't know exactly if this takes place completely subjectively from humanity's consciousness, or whether it's both, because it's certainly going to have to do with our upgrading our consciousness. That's the R of Mashiach, that's the R of the Baal Shem Tov, is helping people get, you know, broader and broader minded and deeper so that we can start to channel light of Mashiach. Or there's some help from the other side as well, you know, sort of a partnership. But he says that's what it's going to look like. The physicality of this world will be refined, via zach, and it will be as refined like the quote-unquote the bodies of the neshamos of the tzaddikim who are currently in what's called Gan Eden HaTachton. That over there is some aspect of a body. And like it looks like a body. But it's absolutely refined. I'm not sure if he means Gan Eden HaTachton, if he means tzaddikim in this world. We're already in a certain way, like tasting Gan Eden, where to you and I it looks like Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal had a body, but Bechlal that wasn't the body, because it was so refined, it was so Kaddish V'tar, you know, the guf itself becomes refined. I just picked a gadol, it can be any gadol, right? He says, no, that's not physicality. It's spiritual. Right? The body of a person who has mastered physicality is ruchni. Their eyes are ruchni. Their nose, their mouth, their ears, they're ruchni. These are spiritual. They become spiritualized. They don't even need physical food. No, so here, he's not speaking about the physical world. That the Svarim explain, they just subside from the good smell of Gan Eden. And they live forever. And they don't have to sleep in anything like this. But that's whatever. They have a body, in some sense. They're in Gan Eden HaTachton, and they're just subsiding and sustaining themselves from the reach, just from the scent of Gan Eden. This is what's going to happen to our bodies in the 7th millennia. Right? So this, of course, is clearly not a purely pragmatic, sort of practical, technical, natural progression. Something changes. Something changes. We'll finish with this. Where he says elsewhere in his writings, in a separate sefer of Zelashonai, it doesn't mean chas v'shalom that the world will be, destroyed and desolate. Ela kavana. What it means is that Ateva v'Hachaymer shematze b'shisha alafim shana yicharev, the natural world order, and our experience of coarse corporeal physicality, materialism, that will be removed, destroyed. V'yeschadesh teva, and nature will be renewed, imbued with a new spirit. Something will happen. There will be a shift. Can you imagine that? Imagine we're sitting in this room and all of a sudden something's activated throughout every part, every molecule of the room, and it's still the room, but it's just like something changes. It's ruchni now, and it's clear to us what was hidden before, that there is no teva. It's just the presence of Hashem is revealed in everything, in the way that it's currently, in a sense, already revealed in the minds and the hearts of tzaddikim who actually lived this way, to the point that at the end of the Baal Tanya's life, they asked him to look up and ask him what did he see, and he looks up at the ceiling and he says, I see the word, gag, whatever, roof, whatever the word for ceiling is. He didn't see the physical world at all. When he looked at a chair, he saw kisei. When he the Hebrew letters with their energies. When he looked at a table, he saw shulchan. There's not a table. There's no such thing as a table. This is spirit. This is all spirit. So those tzaddikim, that's how they approach the world. They don't see physicality. Imagine when there's a shift where it becomes just a little bit more obvious. And maybe that's all that we need, just to wait. Imagine like the dial gets turned up just a drop, and the cusness are, the garments of skin just pull back a little bit. They become a little bit more, if you ever used any like Canva or, like sort of graphic design program, opaque, right? Where you make it just a bit opaque, where it becomes a little bit less solid. It's like starts to be see-through. Imagine if that's all that Mashiach is. That's what we're davening for. Nothing changes. Brent Street is still Brent Street. Mr. Baker is still Mr. Baker. All the food in Mr. Baker is still, but it's just opaque. Like someone shifted the dial, and all of a sudden everything's a bit see-through. Understand? All of a sudden everything is like, oh my gosh, what I thought was so solid, what I thought was mamish solid, it's all ruchni. It's all light. It's all light. That's Mashiach. V'yeschadesh teva, and everything will be renewed. The chaymer and physicality, achar mu'ula v'yafeh ma'od, and it's going to become something else, something wonderful and beautiful. She'ein bo tarei b'sarah, that has nothing of wickedness mixed into it, no concealment of godliness. Ve'ein bo yagain, and memela has no sadness, va'anacha and moaning, v'yisurim and pain, suffering, v'lo shemra klal, elu kulei tov gamor. That's the revelation of total goodness. V'yisaneg yafeh m'sukan ma'od. And everything is just absolutely beautiful and rectified pleasure. And that's what we're davening for. This is what we're davening for. Yerushalayim isn't just a physical place that we want built up. Yerushalayim is Yira Shalim. Right? And Yira is the letters Re'iyah. Right? It means to see. This is what we daven for. That we as individuals should be living with Yira Shamayim, means to wake up to this deeper reality, to immerse ourselves in the teachings of the tzaddikim who didn't let us have a minute, if we immerse ourselves deeply enough, where we forget this, or that's what they're teaching us. The Svarim of the Baal Shem Tov is just trying to give us a taste of Shabbos food already, Erev Shabbos, Toyameh Chaim Zachu. That's it. They're just trying to bring an early Shabbos to help us taste of that light. That the Lubavitch Rebbe says on the way to the bar, you also have to have a drink. You can't wait to the bar to have a drink. On the way to the bar, like a good Lubavitcher, you have to have a drink on the way also to the bar. which means that on the way to Mashiach, you have to also be drinking the light of Mashiach, because how are you going to get to Mashiach unless you begin to embody that light and reveal that light even now? This is what Hasidus is all about. I spoke about this a little bit earlier in the week. We had, don't think any of the Chaver were there, don't hold it against anybody, but in Edgeware, it's very, very beautiful for the Pia Setzner Rebbe's yard site. And it's Kedai, if you have some time to listen to the recording, it's a huge mile to just listen to recordings. I don't know why anybody comes in person, because you could listen on 2 times speed, and over here I speak as fast as I can, but over there you can mamish speed me up. So you can listen to the recording, it's quick. But over there we learned a fundamental teaching for the Pia Setzner about what it means to be a chassid. And it makes it very, very clear there, that the Baal Shem Tov was trying to prepare Am Yisrael for redemption. It wasn't a different approach in Avodas Hashem and a different hashkafa. This is juvenile. It was the difference between Galus and Geula. It was a moment where there was a clear line drawn in the sand that Mikan ve'elech, now Am Yisrael is getting ready. Now Am Yisrael is getting ready for the redemption. Both from the standpoint of bringing music, singing back into Yiddishkeit, which is getting us ready for the Beis HaMikdash, and the aspect of Kirvas Hashem Li Tov, the closeness, the Dveikos, the aspect of the Kruvim, as we're getting ready to go back to the bayis, to the house, where we are married to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ani L'Doid V'Doidi Li, as well as the consciousness of Mashiach, which the Pia Setzner explains as recognizing that not only is there a physical world which contains spirituality, that if you look past the physical you can maybe find something spiritual, but the Gilui of the Baal Shem Tov was that the vessels are themselves spiritual, right? That the Kalim are themselves made out of Ar. Ein oid milvadoi. There is nothing else but a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what we're davening for and yearning for a time which is described by the Nevi'im as being a time when Umala ha'aretz deya as Hashem, the world will be saturated with the consciousness of divinity. Kamayim liyam mechasim, like water covers the ocean bed. And at that point, Memela, there will be no wars, there will be no lowliness, there will be no selfishness, there will be everything will just be utterly and abundantly clear. And this is what we hope for, and daven for, and yearn for. And I think it's important to say, obviously, I think most of the people, at least around the table, are super thrilled, that Donald Trump won the presidency. In a certain sense, this is, more aligned with many of our hopes and visions for policy, both in America, but I think more importantly for the Chaver who live here, and Chaver in Eretz Yisrael, for Jews all around the world, and for security. And some might have different opinions, and that's okay. But I think for the overwhelming majority of Yidden, this is clear, right? That this is a person who is deeply connected with the Jewish community, whose own daughter is a Jew, and whose policies seem to be pro, at least what Israel's policies currently are, and hopefully will be supportive of that. And there was a great degree of celebration for various reasons, that chief among them. But I would just remind everybody that we cannot celebrate anything other than a fundamental shift in the nature of reality. The preservation of the current Metzias and the security of Am Yisrael, wherever they are in the world, is obviously paramount, and we appreciate it and we rejoice in it. But this is not the second coming. You know what I'm saying? It is actually his second coming. But it isn't, you know what I'm saying? This is not like people are blowing shofars, ki'ilu, like Mashiach. Like, what happened exactly? Like, what? We're mamish gullus of gullus of gullus of gullus. We need to be Yidden who are looking for the forward. We want a shift, and until a person is going to be able to stand up and say, something, like, there's a God in the world, there's truth. I think this is happening a little bit more in Argentina than it is anywhere else in the world with that, Javier, or whatever his name is. You saw that clip going around where he stood up and gave a whole Dvar Torah on Parshas Lech Lecha. So that it's bizarre what's going on. Anyway, but it is possible for people to stand up and to recognize, like, the sweetness and the goodness and the truth and the clarity of the narrative that HaKadosh Baruch Hu used to weave the story of history of creation. And as Yidden, we have to be futuristic. We can't settle for even a very strong, fortified Olam Hazeh. We're not settling for Olam Hazeh. We're dreamers, we're visionaries. We're the children and descendants of Yosef HaTzadik. And Yosef HaTzadik is a dreamer. He doesn't settle for the moment. And that's the main thing to keep in mind. We should hear good news. Be'ezus Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless the new government there, which is like I consider my government. I'm very interested in politics and connected with it because I care very deeply about the world, and I think it's a phenomenal opportunity and will certainly be a very interesting 4 years, and we bless him, Be'ezus Hashem, and his chevra with success, and we daven that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should continue to unfold his story as it's marching us step after step after step closer to the Gula. But we vote for the Gula. That's what we vote for. That's our focus. Should only hear B'suras Teves Be'ezus Hashem.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני נושם.